All right, Ground Zero Salem, let's go. I find it kind of funny, before I get into this this update, I was thinking about this just randomly as I was about to hit record. This yelling "let's go" or inserting an expletive in there has been a thing in hardcore and punk and metal to some extent, at the gates of course is a part of that, for decades, and now it's a big thing in this Gen Z kind of gamer culture space. I find that interesting, that it's like this huge phenomenon as a slang term. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I've been saying it for years. Anyways, who cares? You're at Ground Zero Salem with Pat. We're listening to Bombarder. I've only spun this a couple times. I got it in a big order from Caligari or Headsplit. I'm trying to remember. It's weird. I usually end up ordering from those two different distro label, cassette distro label boutique stores around the same time. I don't know if they just always end up having sales around the same time, or if I buy a bunch of stuff from Caligari, I'm like, oh wait, that one was sold out, why don't I look at Headsplit? It's one of those kind of things, so it kind of mushes together in my memory which one I ordered these from. Regardless, this band is from Bosnia Herzegovina. They've been around since 1989. I thought this was recorded in the 80s. It was recorded in 2010. It's just really fun thrash metal, speed metal. If you haven't been able to tell, I've been on a big thrash kick, which is nothing new, really. It's almost kind of like my baseline at this point in my life. But over death metal, even over a lot of kinds of hardcore, I've been just kind of digging into a lot of thrash and speed metal, trying to unearth a lot of second and third tier stuff that I hadn't been exposed to yet. I'm going to do a lot of updates just talking about reissues soon, but on this particular update, I wanted to talk about some 2022 releases that I haven't gotten around to talking about yet. So this will be playing in the background. Just inventive, really fun listen, keeps you interested, etc., etc. All the usual kind of things I say when I like something. MCDT was the label that pressed this. And I'm very interested to hear their old stuff from the late 80s. They've been around the entire time, it seems like. Alright, so I have a small pile of CDs and some LPs. Not a ton of stuff. I went through my piles, my recent arrival stuff that has just been piling up and piling up and piling up for months. I thought I had more, but I've actually talked about a lot of it already in terms of 2022 releases. There's a few things in here I haven't talked about yet. There's a lot of... the vinyl is mostly punk and hardcore stuff, that, particularly leaning towards the Crust genre, which has been really great this year. There's been a lot of good stuff kind of falling under that umbrella this year that I'll discuss. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know how much more of a preamble you want. This got sent to me with my Caligari order. This is the Spasticus Boya split, Spasticating Execution. Once in a while, Ignacio over at Caligari is kind enough to throw something in. I've been a customer for a long time, and when I do order from that distro once or twice a year, I spend some money generally, so that's always appreciated. I have the previous release by Boya that I really enjoyed when it came out. I think it's a 6 or 7 song EP. Both these bands are Italian, very similar in sound. Spasticus, I'd say, is a little bit more roughshod and a little bit more basic, but both bands are very much like late 80s style, kind of like heavy mid-tempo into fast death metal, fairly raw. I'd say if you're a fan of newer bands like Molder, especially if you like that Autopsy Impetigo thing, you can't go wrong with either of these bands. Boya's a little bit more technically adept, a little bit more complex in their riff arrangements and guitar parts. They also have that Italian sense of melody and kind of atmosphere kind of peeking through in a few moments, which is enjoyable. And I don't remember that from their last one, but I'll have to go back and listen to it. I buy so much crap over the years and forget about what it sounded like. It's definitely due for a revisit for me because I remember it being pretty heavy. I also kind of remember Boya being a little bit more straddling the line between the three extreme genres, the three main ones like thrash, death, and black, whereas this release sounds solidly death metal, but that just might be my weird memory being weird. Then I always buy the new Midnight when it comes out. I'm a longtime supporter. They were kind of involved in a formative period for me getting back into metal in the late aughts. They're just really fun. They, like Municipal Waste and some other bands, they kind of played just as much in the DIY hardcore punk scene as they did the metal scene. Going back to one of their earliest releases was with the band The Spits, who are like kind of a Ramones worship band. And they were on fire during their pre-LP period, all their singles and all that stuff compiled on Complete and Total Hell, I think it is, the compilation. All the stuff on that is like some of my favorite music in general from the era. And then Satanic Royalty, I listened to endlessly when it came out. Since then, all their records have been decent. They do what they do well. A lot of it does not stick with me as much as their earlier material does. This latest one on Metal Blade, Let There Be Witchery, is pretty good. I feel like they might be kind of reaching for something a little bit heavier. The first track, Telepathic Nightmare, has a weird sort of jilted approach riff-wise that almost reminds me of very early Voivod, like Roar and War and Pain, as opposed to Venom, which, I mean, we're splitting hairs here. Obviously, that stuff was influenced heavily by Venom. It's my belief that that early Voivod stuff was weird and out there just as much as the stuff that came after. It was just a million miles per hour and played a lot more sloppily. If you listen to a lot of those riffs from those first two LPs, they got something else going on. I don't know if it was the industrial pollution up there in Quebec or what, but you can hear that on this first track. The way things are kind of, I don't know if it's the tuning or the recording. It seems to be a little bit more of a bass end heavy kind of Midnight record. So lyrical themes haven't really veered off in any new direction. I wouldn't expect that from Athenar and Co. You know, there's a lot of the sleazy, sort of misogynistic against, well, I don't know if it counts as misogynistic if people aren't human, demoness, disrespect kind of stuff going on. Maybe not for the faint of heart for some people, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's a Midnight record. It's exactly what I expected. Like it a little bit more than the last couple. It punches you a little bit harder. Liked it. I've been waiting for this for forever. Up next is the full length from Vomit Forth, Seething Malevolence. So yeah, I mean, this was delayed a bunch. If you know anything, if you've been following this band, I was a big fan of their compilation CD of all their demos and other stuff that came out on Maggot Stomp. I want to say almost like 3 years ago now, maybe 2. Northeastern Deprivation. I was in love with it because it was a total love letter to early to mid 90s brutal death metal with a touch of hardcore in there. And this is a legacy band with respect to those roots. I can't remember which member, I believe it's a guitarist. His father was in Tyrant Trooper, which was a classic, pretty brutal Connecticut death metal band. Same guy also played in 100 Demons. So there's a lineage there. If I'm not mistaken, the drummer in an interview on the Heavy Hole said he played at least session or tour drums with Sworn Enemy. So they have those kind of connections, and I was really, really pleased when I heard the tracks on that compiled CD a few years ago. Just fantastic. Early Suffocation, Pyrexia, Internal Bleeding demos, but with a Baphomet from Buffalo. There's a slight kind of thrashy tinge on some stuff. You could hear a little European death metal in there, but it was solidly solidly northeastern, like proto slam kind of stuff. Very energetic, very vibrant. And I think a lot of people were looking forward to this. This is a different animal. I haven't read a ton of reviews of it. Thralls of Metal, I watched their review of it because I was curious to see what those guys thought. They seemed kind of disappointed, and I was too, the first one or two listens. For one thing, when I popped it on, I ripped it and then listened to it through my own streaming thing. When I put it on, I put in really expensive, like, bass boosting earbuds, and they peaked out constantly by just how low end this is. I've listened to it through other avenues, and it doesn't do that. Like, I listened to it on a boombox in my kitchen, it didn't sound like that. But it is very, very, just those sub-levels, just, like, peaking out. If you listen to it on a certain type of speaker, that's going on with it a lot. There's bass drops in it, which can be a little weird if you're not used to it. The production actually reminded me a lot of that last Devourment record, just like almost kind of overwhelming by just how loud it is. The music itself has kind of evolved. I mean, they still have that old school, early to mid 90s New York NYDM brutal thing going on, but they have involved like more of a, I'd say more of a metallic hardcore kind of thing, like a straight up Hatebreed kind of touch here and there. There's a little bit more, I'd say, modern kind of brutal or even slam moment in it, and I'm here for it. It took a couple listens, but I really like this. I'm not disappointed in the least. Like, if I wanted another 30 or 40 minutes of stuff that sounded like the last thing they did, I'd listen to the last thing they did. Wouldn't have been mad if there was a repetition, of that, or maybe honing that a little bit, but I like the direction this went in. This is another one of those bands that was poached from Maggot Stomp and is now on Century Media, the third or fourth one, counting. And I've been waiting for something from these guys for quite a while. I didn't even know they were still active. This was one of the first bands I think I listened to that was on Unspeakable Acts, and their last album, or was it an EP? It was either a long EP or a short album. Doesn't matter. Came out like 4 or 5 years ago. Besieged. Violence Beyond All Reason. You got some pretty good Repka art there. I believe their last record was done by Repka too. It had this very, very similar to the Obituary Twisted Tree eyeball thing. And this is solidly wearing its influences on its sleeve, particularly Beneath the Remains by Sepultura. Other than the vocal style, it doesn't sound like Max singing really. Guy's kind of doing his own thing. It's a riff salad, but it's a delicious riff salad that works. It's very palatable. You enjoy all of it. There's not like a dirty crouton in there that you're not happy about getting in your mouth. But yeah, I mean, if you like Beneath the Remains and then anything that kind of floats around that universe of sound, all that kind of death thrash kind of stuff, Incubus too, of course, this is definitely for you. It's very, very well played. The riffs have a good way of like speeding up and then abruptly kind of slowing down, and a lot of good interplay rhythmically between the rhythm section and the guitars. They're not all charging together at the same pace. Excellent drumming. Out of this world drumming on this. This is a fantastic release. It'll be in my top whatever of the year. If I do one. I'll do one. I'm going to do one. So, and finally, last and certainly not least, the new Enchantment, reformed band from the UK, Cold Soul Embrace. So, this is the project of one Mark G with a C. He's another YouTuber in the metal scene. Great channel, great dude. I was familiar with his band Enchantment's debut when it came out. I bought it at the mall on tape. It's 93 or 94. This is a good example of one of those bands that I was kind of meh about at the time, and then rediscovered that record, Dance the Marble Naked, about 20 or so years later. Re-listened to it when I was kind of diving deep back into Death Doom and that sort of stuff, Peaceville style, doomy death metal, and just thinking it was really dumb of me for not liking it when it came out. It's a great record, and this record, many, many years later, treads that path in a more mature manner, which makes sense, of course. and does it really, really well. This is a fantastic Death Doom record. Very emotive, deep growls, enunciated, very emotionally impactful lyrics. A lot of narrated, kind of spoken, almost poetic parts that give it a gothic tinge that I really, really enjoy. Great riffs. Just super mournful, melancholic, heavy, crushing riffs. The melodic parts are effective where they need to be, and there's a little bit of hope in there. Maybe I'm just looking for that, or maybe I'm reading too much into it. But there's some almost kind of triumphant moments as well that I really appreciate. I spun this just a couple days ago. I've been going on hikes for cardio. I'm on another self-improvement, self-care kick, which is needed. Dieting and stuff, and trying to exercise more. So I've been going to these trails and like walking around in the woods, and like, what a perfect record for just walking around in the forest, feeling like I'm going on like some sort of vision quest. This rules. All right, so that's CDs. Got a pile of LPs here. I don't know what to start with. What's one good one to start off with? Well, this is one of those records. I listen to a lot of music that I'm impressed by. A lot of stuff where I'm like, that was awesome. Next, Nightfeeder was something that I wanted to put on at least 3 times. This just came out. Nightfeeder from Seattle. Can't go wrong with a shock font on the back there. The name of it is Cut All of Your Face Off. It's a nice callback to what internet culture like 12 years ago. Clean all the things. Cut all of your face, singular, off. Let's see. Death Raid Records. If you don't know who Jay Styles is and you're into punkish, metalish kind of stuff, I encourage you to maybe do some research. He was the mastermind behind Disrupt, him and the members of Grief. He went on to move to Minneapolis and join State of Fear. Disrupt being a pioneering Crust band that was almost like an American take on extreme noise terror that were on Relapse. Lots of people into death metal like them because even like myself back in the day, I was exposed to their music through Religion is a Fraud, being on the corporate Decomp. Great like dual barked, shrieked vocals. If I'm not mistaken, Jake did the more high-end shrieking kind. Then he did State of Fear in Minneapolis, which was somewhat metallic but a lot more influenced by straightforward kind of Swedish crust punk, Mob 47 and that kind of stuff. Still being relatively heavy. He moved around a bunch. Journeyman dude. He was back in Boston for a while and did more of a straight up punk band with like a little bit of a rudimentary Peni kind of vibe called Chicken Chest and the Bird Boys. I celebrate his entire discography almost. There's 1 or 2 things I'm missing. He did a band called Consume. He's been out in the Pacific Northwest for quite a spell now. This might be, other than the Disrupt stuff, which is pretty much evergreen as far as I'm concerned, my favorite stuff by him so far. I've been paying attention to them for a while. They did a tape a few years ago. They also did a 7-inch recently, maybe even also this year. Either this year or late last year. And what we're getting here is just this perfect, whatever it is, 20 minutes, tops, maybe 25, of ripping, crusty, hardcore punk. There's elements of that aforementioned Swedish kind of stuff, but more towards the later end of the anti-Cymex when they were a little bit more rock and roll, a little bit more metal, the Scandinavian Jawbreaker era kind of stuff. Wolf Brigade, like the last couple records they've done, but also being way more raw than that. Not really polished, like really frenetic and crazy. There's a lot of that sort of Motorhead discharge, motor charge, whatever kind of thing that Inepsy had. There's just the classic, unmistakable Jay Styles style in this that's pretty much his own sound that's through various kind of filters and avenues. And I mean, this guy's been at it since at least 89, and he's still killing it. Great Crust record. It's got a cool looking insert, which I'll show you. Just cut all of your face off. Okay. Like the dude from Nightbreed, the guy that looks like Ronnie James Dio with the rings. You remember. Then, Sadistic Ritual. Sorry about the glare. I need to get the shrink off of that. I'm such a sad nerd. A sad collector scum nerd. I like to keep the promo stickers. I still have yet to carefully scrape this off and put it on a poly bag. I need a life. So I really like Sadistic Ritual. They're another band. This came out on Prosthetic, but they were on Unspeakable Acts previously. And a couple of records that were very good. Kind of in an era where people were burning out on, or straight up didn't like, all the retro thrash that was in the vein of Municipal Waste and Toxic Holocaust. There was a new strain of bands that were coming out where the super elite types were like, now that's thrash. They didn't, you know, whatever. They did do like straight up thrash very, very well. I have their previous LP. I can't find their first record anywhere. I need to try a little bit harder. I think it's an EP. But their earlier stuff was very manic. I wouldn't say straight up Teutonic, but it did have a certain like European kind of feel for classic thrash stuff. They're out of the Atlanta area. All their stuff, including this record, are great. This came out on Prosthetic, and I didn't even know about it. Thankfully, Killing for Company, thank you, sir, brought this to my attention in a video where he was kind of just waxing poetic about a lot of thrash stuff that came out and the implications for the genre. He quoted my 90s thrash video and talked about some other creators. It's a great video, actually. I'll put a link to it. Put one of those link things right here. Check it out. But anyway, he talked about this record, and I was like, I didn't even know Sadistic Ritual had a new one. I am out of the loop. And this is a bit of a departure. Very thoughtful lyrics, you know. There's a certain like social and political consciousness to them, but they're very... there's a lot of like analogous kind of stuff. It's not bashing you over the head with any direct references to anything. And the music is also doing something that I'm having trouble putting into words or completely grasping, which is good. I mean, it's definitely extreme thrash, kind of heading towards a more brutal direction. There's blasts, you know, there's gruff vocals, but they're not death metal vocals. Super aggressive riffs, but there's something about the way it's concocted that I can't quite put my finger on. Conversely, it isn't sticking with me quite as much as some other stuff. And not that that's bad. It's not that there's like no riffs or it's just like bleh, bleh, and uninspired, because it's very inspired. But it's more of a challenge. Like, there's something about it that's kind of inherently unfamiliar and new, with it being, you know, a combination of several very well-worn genres. So I think that's an excellent combination there. They're thinking, you know, and maybe they're doing drugs, because look at that cover, and that, you know, really helps sometimes. Then, I think this came out this year. I'm going to say fuck it anyway and talk about it. It might have come out late 21, I'm not sure. On Triple B, this is not a Crust record. These guys may not even like Crusters. They're probably fine with them. It's a C4, Chaos Streaks. This is a hardcore band from Boston. They very much sound like, you know, a hardcore band that could be from Boston. It's actually reminds me a lot of Rampage, which was a band out of the Rhode Island area. Started during that whole locking out period where Mental and Righteous Jams and all those bands got big. I think they started in like 2004 or something. They were around till for about 10 years. Great guys in that band, by the way. Rampage kind of had a thing where they started from just kind of a typical like late 80s New York hardcore, bust, get low, two-step, you know, Warzone, breakdown, all that great stuff. But we're like, well, let's have an angle, because there's a bunch of bands that sound like this, and they threw in a lot of scattershot, crazy, almost blast beat, fast parts that were inspired by NYC Mayhem and Straight Ahead. So you had like these really, really good breakdowns, and then just like chaos, you know, and they were really good. They were a fun band. They had one song that didn't age so well. Won't get into that. But C4 are definitely kind of along the same lines. It's very unpredictable. It's very controlled chaos with a lot of emphasis on like wild tempo changes. You know, you could say it could even cross over to appeal to, not to say that it would be, but it could appeal to a lot of power violence fans and stuff like that. And it's just very good. It's not entirely serious. You know, Health Freak Head Stomp. It's about like, it's about like eating burgers. You know, Crashing the Party, Basher Jailbreak. This has got only looks like 10 songs or so on it, and it's like 10 minutes long. But it's great if you like all that like kind of transitionary period New York hardcore that was still very fast, namely Straight Ahead and NYC Mayhem, and probably some lesser known bands that aren't springing to mind for me right now. And Rampage. This is along those lines. There's a little bit of thrash metal in there that you get a little taste of, like, you know, SOD or something like that thrown in there as well. Very, 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 very good band. You know, if I can rehab myself up to like lifting weights again, that's definitely going on. Then we got Decomp. So, guy I know from Boston plays drums in this band. They're a Portland-based band, though. Kevin. Great dude, good drummer. Original drummer from Mourn, I believe. And this is just perfect, slightly metallic Crust. You're thinking about, like, SDS from Japan. Or some Hellbastard stuff. Like, first full-length Hellbastard onward. You know, it's got that sort of foggy Crust kind of production and heaviness. But it also, and gloom, but it also involves like a little bit more intricacy and some palm muting with the riffs that are, you know, it's pronounced kind of thrash influence, like they've been listening to some Sacrilege or something like that makes sense. It's just very good, you know. Nothing really new, not reinventing the wheel, but I haven't heard this kind of stuff this well executed probably since like Hellshock or a band like that, which makes sense. Same label. Can't go wrong with the Celtic Knotwork border. That's standard. And then, finally, Rigorous Institution. Unique New York. Same label. This came out, both of those came out on Blackwater out of Portland, who've been absolutely killing it lately. And it's just, their records are so cheap. I don't know how they afford the overhead. Regardless, financial questions aside, this is amazing. I mean, you can call it Amoebics worship, and you wouldn't be wrong. But I would say that they're also taking some heavy influence from Killing Joke, which again, of course, they were one of Amoebics' main influences. There's a bit more going on than just doing a carbon copy of Amoebics, which is hard enough anyway. I mean, that would be a feather in their cap if they could pull off the atmosphere of Arise and all the other stuff, which they do. They bring it into like a modern production that doesn't sound super modern. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's got the same rawness that those early Amoebics records have, but just everything mastered to be louder. All those records are very percussive. This is a very percussive record. A lot of it's kind of slower. I feel like calling the drums tribal doesn't quite make sense. There's like a lot of circling kind of rhythms in it that are almost hypnotic. That's great. Really heavy riffs, crushing, kind of like a prophet in the middle of a moor yelling to the night sky kind of vocal approach, which is, you know, founded by the Baron from Amoebics, R.I.P. You're dead to me. And yeah, they just kind of bring classic Amoebics kind of stuff and Killing Joke and maybe a little bit of Celtic Frost or something like that, like into a modern context and do it very, very, very well. This is a fantastic release. Another one for the list of 2022 favorites from the year. Good stuff. Pretty bare bones packaging, I think. There's there's a small poster in here. I'll show that to you. Yeah, maybe a little bit of winter in there, but again, we're all talking about bands that influenced each other, so if you like stuff in that general network, get into it. Like it a lot more than those that recent Amoebics record from whenever that was, years ago, maybe 10 years ago now, so not recent. Anyways, that's about it. This is a kind of a bit of a shorty. I wanted to just talk about releases from, catch up with 2022 releases. That about does it. I don't think I have anything else to talk about from this year. Just to show everyone out there that I'm keeping up with things. I'm not just about reissues. But that being said, the next bunch of updates, however many that'll be, are all going to be reissues of stuff that I was previously unfamiliar with and that I dredged up, and I'm gonna talk about. I don't know. Until then, take it easy. You know, hit me up on social media. I'm gonna post more cooking videos probably on Instagram soon. That's fun. Oh yeah, I'm gonna talk about bootlegs soon too. I got some real good boots lately. So that's about it for now. I never know how to end these. It's like 5 years. I suck at this. Bye.